it's funny, it's sad, honestly, that the temperature and the tempo of 1971 is still relevant in 2026. You could put what's going on out in 2026 and people would still relate to it. The album is 55 years old and it still hits every note on what is wrong with the United States of America today. What's going on, everybody? You're right on time for another ride on the Groove Line with your boy Chris Stevens. Hopefully you all are doing well out there. I want to thank so many people who have sent kind words and compliments on my interview with Lester Troutman and Terry Zap Troutman, from the band Zap. We had a wonderful conversation. I hope that came across in the interview. I have to work on my resting Negro face. I look like I was bored or mad. No, I just was really listening to what those two gentlemen had to say, and I had a freaking ball. But that's not why we're here today. You guys can go watch that interview. It's 45 minutes long. You can break it up in pieces and watch it however you want. But today we are honoring the 55th anniversary of one of the most transcendent albums to ever be recorded. It could be no other than Mr. Marvin Gaye Jr. And What's Going On? What's Going On was released on this day, May 21st, 1971 on Tamla Records. And it's Marvin's 11th solo album, but this was the album that broke the mold as far as Marvin Gaye, the artist, goes. When you look at everything that he recorded up to that point, the duets with Tammy Terrell and Kim West, and I think he did some with Martha Reeves as well. And, you know, all the bubblegum pop Motown stuff that he had been doing up to that point, you know, I don't think you can call Heard It Through the Grapevine pop or bubblegum or whatever, but, you know, it's one of those songs that boomers of all generations and races remember. So you could call it pop. But yes, What's Going On marked a shift, not only in just how Marvin sang, not only in what he sang, but even how he looked. I mean, just take a look. Let's look at the cover art once again, if we could. Here he is. You know, it's raining outside. He's got his collar on, his jacket turned up, and he's got a beard. Now, everybody's like, well, why is that such a surprise? Well, if you look at the Marvin Gaye records from all the album covers from the 60s, he never wore facial hair. He changed his whole style up at the beginning of the 70s because, in his words, he was tired of wearing suits. He was tired of, you know, he wanted to grow a beard, and he did. And just look at the back cover. Oh my God, the back cover, you could tell, like, this is a dude who is literally dealing with all sorts of angst. Like, you see these forlorn pieces of trash and what looks like abandoned buildings in the background. You know, he's still got a suit on, but his overcoat is just like drenched, and he's just standing there in the rain because he looks like he's trying to figure out, well, what's going on? And when you look at what was going on in 1971, again, like I mentioned on the Stevie Wonder Where I'm Coming From review, that year was a lot. You had Vietnam still going on. You didn't have Watergate yet, but you had Nixon, you know, running the country all crazy. You had, you know, all sorts of civil unrest still long after Dr. King had been assassinated, long after Malcolm X had been assassinated, long after the Black Panthers had been, you know, snuffed out as a national threat. And you look at everything that was going on in 1971 in the world at that time, the 70s were just, the beginning at least, were very tumultuous. You look at what happened at the 60s and how it just sort of, you know, leaked over into at least the first half of the 70s. And Marvin is looking at the changes. I mean, for one, he doesn't like the contract and the music he's recording. He lost his best duet partner, Tammy Terrell, the previous year to a brain tumor in 1970. And he just saw everything was going on out in the world. You know, Isaac Hayes was putting out some rough edge stuff. Sly and the Family Stone. We definitely going to talk about There's a Riot going on at some point during this year. So Marvin looked at this and said, man, I got to do some stuff on my own. So his friends, Mel Farr and Lem Barney, who were football legends with the Detroit Lions, and the group that he produced, Baby I'm For Real with the Originals, he looked at all of that stuff and said, hey, let's get, I mean, they literally just put what's going on together, you know, just fooling around in the studio. And it was such a great song, but Berry Gordy did not care for social justice in his music for the most part. I mean, the Temps could get away with it because Norman Whitfield drove a hard bargain, and Diana Ross could sing stuff like Runaway Child because, well, we all know about Diana Ross and Berry Gordy's situationship. But Marvin, he had a trump card to play too. He had an ace to play too, as it was. Of course, he was married to Berry Gordy's sister Anna. So What's Going On, the song was recorded in 1970, and it sat for months. And Marvin said, I'm not recording another damn thing until you put What's Going On out. So What's Going On is a single, comes out in the top half of 1971, and to nobody's surprise, it takes off like a rocket. And Berry Gordy's like, all right, I need a full album. Marvin's like, I got you. Marvin ain't done nothing on his album yet, man. What's Going On is the only thing. So he was one of the last mainstays to stay in Detroit after Motown had moved westward to Los Angeles at the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. But Marvin was still in Detroit. So were most of the Funk Brothers. So were some of his closest collaborators. And they put that album together in, 13 days, I think. I mean, it wasn't that long at all. I mean, we tend to think of music as something that takes a long time to perfect and be great and all of that. But when you're in the mood, when you're in the zone, when you're vibing, sometimes it works out like that. And What's Going On was one of those efforts. I mean, it starts off with the title track. And, it's simple as day. Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, brother, there's far too many of you dying. We got to find a way to get some understanding here today. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. Like, he's literally telling people, like, he answered his own question, like picket lines and, all of that. I'm telling you what's going on. We got strikes because the unions were really popping back at that time. Never forget, the United Auto Workers Union pretty much shut down Detroit in the first half of the 1970s. A lot of the cars that GM and Ford and Dodge and Chrysler planned to put out, they were kind of like pushed aside because the UAW said, man, bump that. We over here dealing with this heavy machinery. We need heavy machinery money. So you had your workers' rights. You had civil rights. You had second wave feminism, women's rights. The first half of the 70s was like explosive. And Marvin sort of underscores that, at least the social justice and the labor aspect of it on What's Going On. And you have so many great songs to choose from. I mean, Flying High in the Friendly Skies, is basically Marvin's reasoning for doing weed at that particular point in time. I don't know when he started coke, but you could tell that, him talking about, self-destruction is in my hand, I can't help it. And, I'm lost if I can't find it. So he's clearly talking about, something stronger than alcohol or even sex. And when you look at that, I mean, it just underscores the man. He was very deeply divided and conflicted. And, you have Save the Children, where he screams at the end, save the babies. Like, I think that's still that abused child, because he was an abused child. Let's make no mistake about it. He was an abused child reaching out not only for help for the babies of today, but that young Marvin Gaye that never got to be hugged and loved by his father. And of course, we all know how that ended, unfortunately. His father, a bunch in this world, I'll take you out. That's what his father did, unfortunately, in April of 1984. I got a funny story about that. I'll tell that on another episode. There's nothing funny about Marvin Gaye being murdered, but the day it happened, something happened, within my family and personal circle that, well, I'll tell you another time. But yeah, Save the Children. God is Love. I mean, it's less than 2 minutes long, but it's basically Marvin having church, that old Pentecostal upbringing that he came up with, I forget what the name of the church, where it's like combines, Pentecostal and Jewish sort of ethos. And, he's just basically, having church, don't talk about my father, for God is my friend. He made this world for us to live in and gave us everything. And all he asks of us is that we give each other love. That is still very relevant today. Yes, this world has its pitfalls, but every day you get up, to me, it's a new day to try something different. If you can get up and put food in your mouth, clothes on your back, wash your ass, have a place to live, whether it's with somebody else or by yourself, you're doing okay. And give each other love. It's really that simple. Like, there's no hatred like Christian love if we keeping it a buck. And I know Marvin would be disappointed with how a lot of religious zealots have just misinterpreted the message of God is love. I firmly believe that. But yeah, God is love. Mercy, mercy me. Lord have mercy. If it's not my favorite song on the album, it's 1B or 1A, however you want to slice it. Like, so many times I've heard that song growing up as a kid, because I remember NBA used to use that for I Love This Game, when they would do like these little 30-second commercials featuring old school guys like Earl the Pearl Monroe, Clyde Frazier, Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell. And then when I got to listen to it as an adult again, This is Marvin telling everybody about what we're facing now with data centers and AI and how it's going to sap up all the water. It's going to dry up the land. He's literally telling you, oil wasted on the ocean and upon our seas, fish full of mercury. How much more of this overcrowded land can Mother Earth, stand? Like, that really says it all right there. It's the instrumentation, for one, like, it's very, very jazz influenced. There's not a Motown sound to be found on what's going on. And that's for the better, if we're being completely honest. You look at that, you listen to that album, and it just takes you on a journey that, if you are my age, younger, older, much older, you can still feel what Marvin is saying. Fly on the friendly skies. I already talked about that. But yeah, save the children. Right On, where it's like this nice little jazzy part. Then there's this part in the middle where Marvin sort of breaks it down, and it's like he's macking. He's still macking, even on a social justice album. And then he picks back up with the jazz part at the end. And Holy, Holy is once again, another hymnal, another gospel, another psalm, as it were. And then it closes out with Inner City Blues. Oh my God, the thunder, because Marvin sings this real sweet part at the end of Holy, Holy. When he's talking about salvation, he goes, like that old doo-wop Moonglows background that he leaned on so many times, stacking his vocals. And then here comes Inner City Blues. Boom. The drum hits first. Boom. And then it goes. And then you hear the congas come in. And then, Marvin starts scatting. And then he goes right into it. Rockets, moonshots, spending on the have-nots, money. We make it. But before we see it, you take it. Make me want to holler the way they do my life. Everything about that song is just pitch perfect for 1971, and it's pitch perfect, unfortunately, for 2026. Bad breaks, letdowns, setbacks. The natural fact is, honey, that I can't pay my taxes. And, crime is increasing, trigger happy policing, panic is spreading. God knows where we're heading. Hello, look at the world today. We got, ICE out here roaming the streets, snatching up Latinos and Asians and picking on black folk that we've been here, but we're still not citizens according to these people. And just it's funny, it's sad, honestly, that the temperature and the tempo of 1971 is still relevant in 2026. You could put what's going on out in 2026 and people would still relate to it. The album is 55 years old and it still hits every note on what is wrong with the United States of America today. That's why art lasts, man. Art outlives us all. It outlived Marvin Gaye. It outlived James Brown. It outlived Frankie Beverly. It outlived so many others. And we have them to thank it's like Marvin said on, Holy, Holy. He left a book for us to believe in, and we got a lot to learn from it. The Bible. He's talking about Jesus in the Bible. But these artists left books of their own for us to learn from and live off of and learn some lessons and be better people, be better human beings, be a better society if we want to be. And there's a group of people who don't want to be better humans, who don't want to be better citizens. And these are the people with the money. These are people with the resources. These are people with the demonic nature to destroy everything, which is what they're on their way to doing. I don't know what we can do to fix it, but I listen to what's going on and I feel the despair in Marvin's voice. And I also feel this sort of like quiet hope that maybe there will come a day where there's a group of people, there's a group of change makers who can get this world back on the right path. At least I think that's, what I gain from what's going on. But as a whole, you can't, again, when I always say you can't tell the story of something without something, I truly mean you can't tell the story of Black music. You can't tell the story about music in the 70s. You can't tell the story about Black people as a whole without what's going on by Marvin Gaye. Everything about that album just, again, it's where you need it to be, when you need it, how you need it. Oh, I forgot about What's Happening, Brother. That it's basically the entire album is him writing from the perspective of his brother, Frankie. Now, if you didn't know, Frankie and Marvin looked so much alike. I didn't figure that out until YouTube came along, because Frankie had died in, I think, 2001, 2002, somewhere thereabouts. But he sang a song about Marvin called about, me and my brother. And a video of it, folks, surfaced on YouTube in the late aughts. And I'm like, damn, They could have been twins. I mean, the only thing you could tell the difference from Frankie and Marvin was Frankie was just a little bit fairer skinned. But Frankie and Marvin, you put them side by side, man, Alberta Gaye spit them boys out. Make no mistake about it. I mean, they look like Marvin Sr. too. I mean, he couldn't deny them kids, even though he didn't, really like Marvin that much, which I found to be weird because he named him after him for some strange reason. But be that as it may, what's going on is basically Marvin's telling the story from Frankie's perspective, because Frankie went over to Vietnam. That's what's happening, brothers, all about. Hey, baby, what you know good? I'm just getting back, but I would, talking about writing a letter back, because he was waiting to write the letter, to his family, let him know that, yes, I'm alive. This war thing, this Vietnam thing stinks. What am I reading in the papers? Why can't people find jobs? Why is our baseball team going to have a chance? Because the Washington Senators were still in D.C. because that's where the Gaye family was from, Washington, D.C. And the Senators eventually, by the time this album came about, they were in there last year in D.C. They moved to Dallas and became the Texas Rangers. So it's a different time. That album tells you about where Black people and Black life and society as a whole was in the early 70s. And you can't tell the story of this world without what's going on by Marvin Gaye. It's ranked high on so many album lists for a reason. And it just really just hits you every time. Listening to it before I started this review, it was like, damn. That's all you can say. And that's going to do it for this edition of On the Groove Line. Greatly appreciate you wonderful people for tuning in. Contact information will be in the description below. Don't forget to like and comment on these videos because I talk back in the comments. So what's your feelings on what's going on? Do you have fond memories of it? What are your favorite songs from the album? Let me know. Don't forget to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you're notified of all new videos that drop on this channel. That's going to do it for me. It's Memorial Day weekend. I got some house cleaning to do. Might do some cooking. I haven't decided yet, but I'm definitely going to get my apartment in order. But until the next time we speak, y'all enjoy your long weekend. And until next time we speak, may you find the groove or may the groove find you.